Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Arizona Illustrated for Friday, the 12th of October, 2012. I'm Jim Ninsel, host of Political Roundtable, our weekly analysis and commentary on local, state, and national politics. Tonight on the Roundtable, we'll take a look at the down-ticket legislative races in Pima County as early voting starts. We'll also take a look at the races for Pima County Board of Supervisors and examine the influence of so-called dark money on the campaigns. Joining me this evening is Pima County Democratic Party Chairman Jeff Rogers, Republican strategist Sam Stone, and Tucson City Councilman Steve Kozachik. Thanks to all of you for being here.
Thank you.
Some of the big news this week was up in Phoenix, where Richard Carmona and Jeff Flake met for the first time in a televised debate. Following that, Richard Carmona welcomed Bill Clinton to Phoenix. We saw a poll released by the Democrats that showed Carmona with a 4-point lead, and Larry Sabato, the national analyst, has moved this race into a toss-up category, although other analysts still have it leaning in Flake's direction. Jeff, the momentum seems to be moving in Richard Carmona's way.
I'd say so. And what I like most about this poll is that it oversampled Republicans. It had 39% Republican looked at versus 36%, which is their real representation in the state, and the Democrats 30%, which is their 30% representation in the state. So the real lead might be even higher than that. And some of the other takeaways from it were the favorability and unfavorability ratings. And this is where you can see the damage done to Flake from the primary. Right now, his favorability rating is 36. An unfavorable 38, whereas with Carmona, it's 39 favorable and 24 unfavorable. So you can see that Carmona's got a lot of room to maneuver. In addition to that, 73% of the Republicans were supporting Flake, whereas 87% were supporting Carmona. So we can see that there's a lot of areas where Carmona can really build on this lead, and I think the lead is probably even greater than the 4 points that we're seeing. And now we're seeing groups like Freedom Works come in to weigh in, as well as a lot more money and a lot more independent money, probably financed by outside groups that are going to come into play here on behalf of Flake to sort of shore him up. But I think people, as I've said all along here, when people get to know Rich Carmona, they like what they see, and when they compare it to Flake, who's been a lifetime politician or a lobbyist, they see the difference, and that's where we're going.
And Sam, Jeff here referenced your new job with Freedom Works. You're helping Super PAC with backing Jeff Flake here. But let me ask you, this debate this last week, how do you think it went for the two candidates?
I thought it was a great debate. I thought they stuck to the issues very well. I thought Jeff Flake presented himself extraordinarily well. He's shown over the years that he is one of the true fighters in Congress for fiscal responsibility. He's stood out from the Republican Party on a host of issues, specifically earmarks, and he made that very clear at the debate. I thought he did extraordinarily well. And, the polling on our side says something very different. It shows about a 6-point lead for Flake right now. And most of the undecideds, the majority of the undecideds are leaning to Mitt Romney. So as long as we can get those folks to swing into Jeff Flake's camp at the end, we're very, very confident we can win. That said, it is a much closer race than anyone anticipated, and Jeff is right. That primary with Will Cardin really, really hurt Jeff Flake. I don't think this would be a race without that contest leading things off. It gave Richard Carmona time to define Jeff Flake in his own advertising, and Flake hadn't had the chance to do the same thing with Carmona. Now we're seeing that with the ads that are coming out, looking at Richard Carmona's history and who he really is, some of the issues he's had in the past, where he has never ended a job on good terms, where he's had conflicts with many of the people he's worked with, and even the Tucson Weekly had written about the job he did at the Pima Health Administration and was let go from that job for mismanagement and wasting funds. So
actually, he was not let go. He left that job voluntarily, and as is the case often with indigent health care, it's a money-losing operation no matter what you do. And many of the suggestions to change that organization were implemented after he left, and he was not let go.
I think those were good changes to make, but looking back at the quotes from that time period, many of the Democrats here in town were the ones calling for his dismissal.
Well, I wasn't calling for it, and I don't recall any that were, including Raul Grijalva, who was on the Board of Supervisors at the time.
And Steve, your thoughts on where this is?
Sure. Yeah. You guys don't want to look at Richard Carmona's resume because that will just expand the lead for him. An interesting part of that polling that also came out was that independents are breaking for Carmona 51 to 38. That's significant. I watched the debate also, and you're right. Jeff Flake was hurt by the primary, but he was hurt because he ran as far to the right as he could, trying to outdistance Will Cardin to the right. Now he's trying to pivot back to the center. It's not working. I watched the debate. I evidently was watching a different show than you were, because I saw this plastic clip-on smile that Jeff Flake kept throwing across the table all night long. It doesn't sell. People look at the guy as nothing but a cookie-cutter politician who's going to say whatever needs to be said in front of whatever audience he's in front of. Carmona, on the other side of the table, is simply right straight back at you. This is what I stand for. These are my beliefs. This is my resume. And he's a stand-up guy, and I think that lead is going to continue to expand as we get closer to the election.
I will give you this. Flake's got great teeth.
They're actually going to be here on Arizona Illustrated on Friday nights, on our debate right here, or Monday night next week. So tune in for that. And we've talked a lot about this Senate race. We've talked a lot about the congressional races, but I don't think we've really focused too much on our local legislative races here. And I want to talk about those tonight. We've got probably the most interesting one here in Midtown Tucson, on the south side of Speedway and the east side of Tucson is really a competitive district. Democrats have a 3 to 4 point voter registration edge there. You have Frank Antinori, who's been a very conservative Republican lawmaker, running against Dave Bradley, a former Democratic state representative in that race. And Sam, does Frank Antinori have a chance here in what is a Democratic district?
It's going to be very, very difficult. There's no question about it, because Frank, as we all know, is very outspoken and blunt from time to time. He's done a very good job, however, in the State House. Sometimes you need that bull in the china shop to break down some barriers, and we've seen the state has really done very well in its economic recovery outside of southern Arizona, where we're now 10th in the nation statewide in new job growth, but dead last in the nation here in southern Arizona. So you can see they're doing a good job, but they can't pull the local governments along here with them. There's only so much they can do. I do think Frank has a chance, and I think the other candidates on that ticket, Ted Vogt is one of the really, really outstanding young legislators we have in Phoenix, and Todd Clodfelter, a longtime resident of Tucson, a very, very good guy, businessman, family man. I think he makes an outstanding addition to that ticket.
And we had those House candidates on here earlier, and I actually do want to talk about that race in a minute, but let's go back to the Senate race here. Frank has certainly got himself in headlines again this week with some of the comments that he's made, Steve.
If he was just a bull in a china factory, he might have a chance. But let's look at the race. I mean, Frank is running an absolutely hypocritical race. He is the guy who says, I'm all for small government, and yet virtually every paycheck the guy has ever cashed has been subsidized by the taxpayers. He is running a campaign of intimidation. I have spoken to members of the Republican caucus all the way up to and including the governor's office, and they say, we are tired of this blowhard. We don't want to work with the guy anymore. We're tired of his act. Enough. And so even his own caucus has tired him. He's running a campaign based on cliches. He has said that the people that I represent are a bunch of dirty hippies who don't pay taxes and they're all on food stamps. And oh, by the way, now I want to represent them. That ain't going to sell out in the real world, Frank. You look at David Bradley. When he was in the legislature, he was very outspoken in terms of how do we balance the budget where everybody takes a piece of the pain. He talked about programmatic cuts as well as tax increases. Everybody's got a part of this thing. He was up there talking about education, STEAM education, science, technology, engineering, the arts, and math, while Frank Antinori and Atomic Al were talking about funding education by making Saddlebrook into a nuclear waste dump. David Bradley was talking about the thousands and thousands of at-risk children we have in this state and trying to fully fund foster care, while Antinori was talking about cutting social programs. There are some of us who believe that there are some legitimate government programs. Frank Antinori wouldn't get that moral equivalency if it hit him in the face. This thing is going to be a blowout for David Bradley.
There are some of us who believe there's only so much money in the state budget to fund programs, and we've been in a very tough period. And they've navigated that period brilliantly to start bringing us out of this.
Right. And we have thousands and thousands of people right now who are suffering on the streets. David Bradley has his eye on them.
We do here in Tucson. The rest of the state is growing at a very good rate now the last 2 years.
We're talking about at-risk kids who are suffering for foster care all over this state, not just in Maricopa, not just in Pima County.
The answer is economic growth to create more revenue.
The answer is prioritizing at the state budget level. And when you have guys gutting public education, you have guys cutting social programs that leave kids on the street, and you have another candidate who is saying we have to fully fund some of our core services, one of which is education, and one of which is making sure that we have at-risk kids in foster homes, that is a stark difference between these two candidates.
Right, there's no doubt there are stark differences between them.
I'm going to vote for Steve.
I think Frank's clearly his outspoken manner. I mean, the local Chamber of Commerce has decided to endorse Dave Bradley in this race.
Yeah, and that speaks volumes right there. I mean, and after he finds out about it, the Arizona Capital Times publishes his rant and tirade, and here's a little bit of it. He called the Chamber of Commerce a squishy, whiny, crybaby, center-left organization with no connection to business. Come on. I mean, if there's anybody that has a connection to the business community, it's the Chamber of Commerce, of course. And then when asked about why traditional Republican backers like Donald Diamond and Jim Click and others weren't supporting him this time, he says, well, they know I won't be their butt boy in the legislature. Now, come on. I mean, this guy he digs a new grave for himself every day. And I'm just, I predicted this was the end of Frank Antonori a long time ago, and I predicted again. I think Steve's right. He's going to lose by a wide margin.
Sam?
You know, there's no question Frank is not great at taking criticism and tends to respond very colorfully, and that might have been one of the funniest quotes I've read from any politician this year. I had a pretty good chuckle.
I'll tell you who didn't get a chuckle over it was Mike Varney from the Chamber of Commerce and Don Diamond and Jim Click, some of his biggest supporters in the past. People are tired of the act, man, and this is it for him.
Well, what about the House races in this one? Sam mentioned earlier you've got Ted Vogt and Todd Clodfelter on one side, Stephanie Mock and Bruce Wheeler on the other side. Jeff, your sense of how that's going to go?
I think we're going to be okay in those races. You got to remember that Ted Vogt is just a politer, more gentlemanly version of Frank Antonori in some respects because he made the same votes as Frank did in the State House. He voted for the birther bill. He voted for Senate Bill 1070. He voted for that bill that would have denied contraception to women. Their employers would have been allowed to eliminate it from the health plan. He voted anti-choice at every chance he got. He voted for vouchers instead of public schools. Voted against education, both K through 12 and university level. So this is a guy that, he is a much more gentlemanly, nice guy. I mean, I've met him, and he's immediately likable and a nice guy, but his votes are just too extreme for that district. I mean, that district is not going to support someone like that. Remember, when he was first elected, it was an LD 30, which was a mostly rural, and then the southern part of Pima County. And you can maybe get elected like that there, but not in Midtown, especially not after the insults he's made of the people who live in that exact area.
In terms of voter registration, this is probably the closest district in the state for this cycle, and I think we have a very good chance with Ted to get him in there. Todd's got a little bit more work because he didn't have the name ID coming in, but certainly I think he's building that nicely. You mentioned some of those votes. 90% of the votes that have passed in the state legislature in the last 2 years have been bipartisan. 90%. So we're focusing on a handful of subsidiary issues that are not the meat of what the state legislature is doing. It makes for loud news, but it's not good policy. We're focusing there on the fiscal issues that we need to get in hand to get the state back going. Steve mentioned education cuts. Yeah, we did have to cut there. That we cut less in education than in any other part of the state funding. And the problem we have is that you can look. We spend more per student here in Arizona than they do in Japan, than they do in almost any European country, and all those countries have far better results. So I think we're a lot of conservatives.
We're dead last in America. I mean, we're hanging back of Mississippi and Louisiana. Not a proud place for us to be. I mean,
actually, our classroom funding is not dead last.
We're consistently dead last in per student funding, and we have been for a good 12 years. And so, if these Republicans stand for anything, it's not education.
We're not achieving any education successes anywhere in the country right now, except in our charter school programs, which are doing extraordinarily well for low-income and English language learners. And
or when you can
we
handpick
may
your
have
students and tell others that you're not welcome here, that makes for a little bit of a problem in my mind.
a lot of these are based on the lottery system, so there is no handpicking.
All right. I want to also talk about the other competitive district in Tucson on the other side of Speedway, and it kind of cuts up into the Casas Adobes area and the Catalina foothills, and that is the Legislative District 9. You have a competitive House race there as well. Ethan Orr is the one Republican candidate, then you have two Democrats, Moher Sidwa and Victoria Steele. And that one also, Ethan Orr seems to be taking a much more moderate approach, running and saying, look, you should elect me because I'm a Republican who will fight for Pima County and for Tucson, and you need somebody like that within the Republican delegation. And is that a good message to send out there?
Yeah, two things. First of all, on the other race, the only one of those candidates that I'm really behind right now is Bruce Wheeler. The guy is an absolutely quality guy. He and I worked together on seller incentives, on the film incentive bill, and he has demonstrated the willingness and ability to reach across the aisle and work collaboratively with all of his colleagues up in Phoenix. As far as vote is concerned, if you go around town, I run and I bike all over the city, every one of his signs is physically touching Antonori's sign. You look at the votes that he takes, almost 95% of them are cheek by jowl with Antonori. If you are that joined at the hip with a guy like Frank, you're probably too far out for this district. The one that you're talking about now, I'm going to split my vote on that one. I like Ethan Orr. He has shown that he's got a heart for the underserved in this community through his work with linkages, working with the disabled people and finding them jobs. And I like Mohar. She is clearly an intelligent woman who has demonstrated that she has the ability and the inclination to look at issues issue by issue and make a determination based not on party but on what the specifics of the item are.
Is that the first Republican you've endorsed in 2 years?
No, actually, you should have been watching when I was endorsing Ray Carroll earlier on in the year, too.
And it seems to me as if that is a problem for the Democrats up in that district. You have a Republican who is working a much more moderate angle in a very competitive district.
Well, that, and he's also, in Legislative District 10, we've got two fine candidates. Stephanie Mock is a superb candidate, and we've got a great ground game out there. We see no evidence of a ground game on the Republicans' behalf so far, and it's getting kind of late in the day. The ballots have already gone out. So I'm confident there. In LD 9, I'm a little more worried because of just what Steve said here. Ethan Orr seems like a very nice guy, but we've got two superb female candidates there, and one of the issues that we're going to be talking about are women's rights and women's right to control their own health care. And that's somewhere where Ethan Orr is not on our team, let's say. He is a very, very, very strong anti-choice candidate. I believe he only believes that a woman should have a right only to save her life. That's all, not even in rape and incest. So he's got some pretty extraordinary conservative social views there that are going to be a problem for that district, because that district's a pretty moderate district. Women outnumber men, and women vote more than men in that district.
You know, I think Ethan's got a great chance. One of the things that Jeff alluded to is that he's the only Republican on the House ballot there, so there are going to be quite a few people who for one reason or another, check his box either as a single shot, which gives him an advantage, or they may choose to vote. There may be some folks who choose to vote for two Democrats and one Republican in that district, you know, at the Senate and the House. So I think Ethan's got a really strong sort of insider advantage there. And, you know, his work in this community is outstanding. A master's degree from the University of Arizona, his work with linkages, his work in with the city of South Tucson in economic development. He's a very, very strong candidate and will be a great addition to the State House.
And I think it will be healthy for the legislature to have, in the midst of the Antonoris of the world, a moderate Republican to show that, yeah, we do exist out here still. And so that would be healthy. Yes, he is to the right of me in social issues.
Let's move on to the county races because we're running out of time on the set once again. And I wanted to talk about these because there are two, I think, that are really competitive. And one of them is where Ann Day is retiring. You have an open seat. You have Republican Allie Miller, who has been a Tea Party organizer in the past, and she's running against Nancy Young-Wright, the Democrat up there, a former state lawmaker and Amphi school board member. Jeff, about 40% of the voters in this district are Republican. I think about 32% or so are Democrats. So it's a tough hill for a Democrat to climb. But do you think there's a path to victory for Nancy Young-Wright?
I don't think we could have beat Mike Helen, or if they put somebody else up that was moderate like that. But this is a golden opportunity for us that the Republicans, by putting somebody in there with who was always such a proud member of the Tea Party, and now that we're in the general election cycle, she says you're calling her a name if you associate her with the Tea Party. But so this is a real blessing for us. I think she's also someone whose views are pretty extreme, who even when confronted with facts, you've done some fine pieces on her, when confronted with the fact that there isn't $300 and some odd million missing in the county budget. That money was spent properly on administration of the highway department and the streets. So, and when confronted with that, she just poo-poos it and then adopts the same Tea Party line that she had before. So I don't think this is she's someone who is really going to be more of a bomb thrower, who's not going to cooperate with the other people on the Board of Supervisors. So this is a wonderful pickup chance for us.
Sam, your thoughts?
Well, I think the last thing we need is anyone cooperating with our existing Board of Supervisors. So we can start there. But, even I have underestimated Allie Miller consistently, and I think so have a lot of people in this community. Regardless of your views on her positions, she is the single hardest working candidate in Southern Arizona at this time. I mean, she's gone out and walked so many doors, it's absurd, just herself. Not to mention she has a very good grassroots team working with her because that's her background in organizing. So anyone who counts Allie Miller out of that race is making a huge underestimation of her ability to just grind it out.
And Steve, I've looked at a map of how that primary worked, and Allie did very well on the northern half of the district, but the Catalina Foothills belt really went for Mike Helen in that race.
Yeah, and she is the single candidate in the primary who had an identifiable voting block, and the rest of the party split the ticket. And so she emerged on the basis of, gee, I've got the Tea Party behind me, and the rest of them, and Mike Helen would have been a really astounding candidate. She continues to be challenged by the facts. As recently as last night at the debate out at the Loft Theater, it wasn't a debate, it was a forum at the Loft Theater, she continues to take credit for the FBI investigation that's going on over the city when that was a state legislative commissioned investigation. As Jeff points out, from day one, she has mischaracterized the county debt, doesn't quite understand that the county is the sole county in the state that's responsible for funding a sewer wastewater treatment plant and HERF debt. And so, she may have an identifiable voting block. She is certainly challenged by the facts, though, as this thing moves forward. Nancy Young-Wright was the only one on the stage last night that indicated an interest and an ability to reach across party lines. She did it in the legislature. She understands how to prioritize the issues, and I think she is going to be a formidable candidate because you have 11,000 Republicans who voted in that primary who did not vote for Allie Miller. And so now they have an opportunity to take a look at both of the candidates side by side.
And then the other competitive race, I think, is the District 3 race where Sharon Bronson is facing, she's been going for her 5th term on the Board of Supervisors, and she's facing Tanner Bell, political newcomer. And this is the race, I think, that people who do not like the county see as the swing seat, the one that they have a chance at winning here and changing the control of the county from Democrat to Republican. But I think the voter registration there is about 40% Democratic and only 28% Republican, and independents actually outnumber the Republicans in that district. Sam, is Tanner Bell got a path to victory here?
He's got a very difficult path to victory. There's no doubt about it. That's a tough race. You look at the demographics there, it's difficult. He's a political newcomer. He didn't have the action in the primary that Allie Miller did that kind of drew the attention to that race. So he's still got a lot of work in developing name ID. I think the thing people have to ask themselves is, are you happy with the way the county's been operating over the last few decades? Or do you want to see a little bit of fiscal responsibility brought into that organization where, at this point, they're more interested in handing out patronage jobs than paving our roads?
And that's a message that's going out, I think. Let's take a look at a clip here from something called the Pima Bunch. That is, the opponents of Sharon Bronson are running on the web.
Where are the jobs? Yo no sé. Where are they? Pima County is now so good at saying no, they forgot how to say yes.
We know the county doesn't like the copper mines.
Or home builders. The prosperous city of Marana.
Annexation.
What does Pima County like?
So that's a clip from a web series that's going on right now, Steve, that's trying to work up opposition to the county. Is this an effective campaign strategy?
It would probably get a C in a high school multimedia class from the standpoint of content and quality. The thing is Bush League, it's amateur, and it's not going to win any votes for anybody.
And it's being funded, Jeff, by this Arizonans for a Brighter Future, this dark money group that is, right. We don't know who's contributing to it, but we know the organizer is a developer who's unhappy with the county.
Well, we know that Arizona is for a Brighter Future, 100% of their funding has come from a different group, which is incorporated in Delaware and is apparently incorporated by this Mr. Mike Farley. So, I guess he's in back of it. I don't know why he's so upset with the County Board of Supervisors, but I can only guess that some of his developments, he didn't get what he wanted. But, Sharon Bronson is a fine candidate. Given the voter registration edge we have there, she has done tremendous work. Just in this past term, she worked very hard to bring Roach Labs jobs to Oro Valley. There's going to be over 500 people hired there. Another job creator that's coming is a high-tech company called Accelerate, which is also going to bring a lot of jobs to here, and she worked very hard on both of those projects. I just don't think she's in danger there.
And Sam, that
well, that's a horrific ad. I'm not even going to try to defend.
Did you say terrific or horrific?
Horrific. Okay, let's be clear.
We've got about 20 seconds.
Yeah,
here, so.
No, that was a terrible production. On the other hand, the basic point is accurate. You look at what's going on in Pima County. I'm not surprised that there's a developer or more than one developer who's looking to put money into these races and change the control of the board, because anyone who's tried to put a business or build a development here in Pima County has had
I want to see a group of developers. Look at the people who contributed to Sharon Bronson. It's pretty developer rich.
And she did get the Saba endorsement, but that's all the time we have for tonight. You can learn more about what's happening in politics by visiting azpm.org. And while you're on our website, we'd love to hear your thoughts about tonight's program, so be sure to leave us a comment. To find out the latest from AZPM, follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Stay tuned next for the News Hour, and then at 8:30, tune into Arizona Week for an in-depth look at Prop 204, which would extend the 1-cent sales tax to boost spending in schools and to pay for highway and road programs. On Monday, Arizona Illustrated will bring you a 1-hour debate between the U.S. Senate candidates Jeff Flake and Richard Carmona. I'm Jim Ninsel. Thanks for watching, and have a great weekend.